Welcome to Principles of Economics. This is a class that's offered in English. The first week, I'm just going to use the TA sessions to give enough lectures so that you get a chance to get used to or to sample my lectures to make sure that this is the thing that you want to take. The 10 Principles of Economics that's the video that I just shared. There's the QR code. If you want, you can watch it. It's also on my website. The course syllabus is the QR code on the left. Okay, so let's start. So the first thing is that this class will be done extensively using Slido. Please scan the QR code and join with your, say, student ID number or your real name. And so there will be a lot of questions that are asked through Slido, and so a lot of the classroom experiments that used to be done in person, now we need to do this. We need to use this to actually make it work. And so yeah, so please prepare. And the key thing for Slido, the default option is that there's a Q&A and a poll. The Q&A part is at any point of the lecture when you have problems. So you should type your questions in there. And so at the end of each section, I will actually show all of the questions on the PowerPoint so that everybody can see, and I'll try to answer them. And actually, you were able to see everybody's questions. So you should vote for the questions that you think that are also your questions, and not vote or downvote the questions that you don't think are important. So okay, so that's that. But then now and then I will have some polls, and so that's on the other tab in Slido. All right, so let's just jump in. So this is the chapter 1 of Principles of Economics, titled 10 Principles of Economics. All right, so yeah, so basically in this chapter we're going to look at what questions economics is about, and then we'll look at principles about how people make decisions, principles of how people interact, and how the economy works as a whole. All right, so what questions do economists ask? So they ask about resource, and resource is scarce. So scarcity is a problem. So, well, the biggest scarcity nowadays is attention and time. I mean, if you come to this lecture, you can't attend some other lecture. Yeah, so that's the limited nature of the resource of time. And yeah, so of course everybody wants a lot of things, but resources are limited. So a society can only produce this amount, and so you have to decide what to produce and who's going to get it. So economics is about how the society manages scarce resource. So what this means is that, at some sense, economics is a sub-discipline of management because it only manages one thing: scarce resources. Yeah, so in that sense, well, if you come from the management school, congratulations. I mean, you are in a broader discipline than economics, because economists only care about scarce resources, nothing else. So economists study how people decide how much to work, what to buy, how much to save, how do they invest, and all that. And also, it looks at firms. So firms have to decide what to produce, how many workers to hire, and so on. And also, the society has to decide how to divide its resources between national defense, consumer goods, environmental protection, and so on. So it's all about these different choices. And this could be done by individuals, or by companies, or even by the entire society. All right, so yeah, so that's what traditionally economists think about what is economics. And so it's really centered on production and distribution. So what to produce and how to distribute these goods to satisfy the needs and wants of people in the society. The problem for this definition is that if you think of it, nowadays a lot of things are free. I mean, if you open up your cell phone, you would find that, hey, how many apps do you download from your cell phone? Well, most of them are free. You don't really pay anything to get it, but you get it for free. So the question there would be, hey, so now if this is free, then Well, I mean, the distribution is not a problem. Everybody's going to get it. The flip side of this is if you think of a author of an app who tries to give these, who tries to produce a lot of apps for everybody to use. And the problem here is that once this app is written, if you upload it to App Store or Google Play, well, I mean, what's the cost for producing 2 copies, 10 copies, 100 copies of the same app? Well, it's 0. So now production is not a problem because price is 0. You can just upload it and so that 10 million people can use it. And downloading it is almost everything is free. So then it's almost like, hey, so now production and distribution is not an issue. Somehow resources are not scarce. That's actually misleading. So, but anyway, so because of this, the following is my definition of economics. It's the study of institutions and human behavior, the reaction to institutions. And in Chinese, it's only 8 characters. 上有政策，下有对策. So the classically economists talk about markets. That's just one example, because that's just one institution, and how people react to this institution. You can think of other possible mechanisms, matchmaking, auctions, even the government. I mean, that's an institution. The Congress, that's also an institution. Think about our national health insurance. I mean, Taiwan is well known for very popular blanket coverage for health services through this very cheap national health insurance. That's also an institution. And of course, you can ask, so what are people's reaction to that? Nowadays, people worry that when will the Taiwan National Health Insurance go bankrupt because it's so cheap, and then there are various levels of abuse. Family, this could also be an institution. That's an informal institution. Different social norms, that's also like that. Yeah. Okay, so why is this important? Well, because people respond to incentives. This issue can go all the way back even to central planning. So there in the Soviet Union, if you think of it, well, so here's a good example. If the central planning says, so we need a ton of nails, so if it's only about weight, then if you want a ton of nails, here is a ton of nails. One nail, that's a whole ton. So yeah, well, why is that? Well, you have a institution, the central planning, and the only goal is to get a ton of nails, regardless of the size, the quality, and all that. And so you get a ton of nails. So that's enough for what is economics. Now we're going to start to look at the 10 principles. The first principle is, the first 4 principles is about how people make decisions. And so let's go through these one by one. So the first principle is people face trade-offs. So to get something, you have to give something up. If you come to this class, you would have to give up attending other classes. Too bad. Of course, if you try to go to a party the night before your midterm exam of Principles of Microeconomics, then you have less time to study. And you might have a hangover during the exam, and so of course that would affect your performance. If you want to get more money to buy more stuff, you have to work longer, and so you have less time to enjoy these stuff. That's also a trade-off. If you want to protect the environment, well, that means that something has to give. Actually, in Taiwan, we were recently having a referendum. It was planned to be in the summer, but now postponed because of the pandemic. But it's about trying to protect the coral reefs. But if you want to do that, then there is a trade-off. That means that Taiwan would have less electricity that could be used. And because of that, well, of course, TSMC or some other industries and factories will not have enough electricity. So there's a trade-off. Okay, and of course, if you spend more money on national defense, that means that you're more protected from foreign aggressors. But that means that you have less to spend on consumer goods and to raise your standard of living. So there's various trade-offs. Yeah, so regarding pollution regulations, so to get a cleaner environment and improve health, but that means that so you are going to raise the cost of production, and so that could reduce the well-being of firm owners, workers, and customers of that particular factory or industry. So yeah, so people face trade-offs. Okay, so here is so going on a more broader view, you would see that the societies actually face trade-offs, because to maximize the benefit of scarce resources, you might want to care about efficiency. But then you say, wait a minute, but if all of this is produced and given to only one person, that's not fair. So you may also care about equality. So is this prosperity sort of evenly distributed across people in the society? That's a problem. But then here's the trade-off. To achieve this equality, you need to redistribute income, but that means that you could be discouraging people to work, because usually to achieve this, you tax the wealthy and then try to subsidize the poor. But then that means that every dollar earned for the hardworking wealthy people is taken away, and so that reduces their incentives to work. Okay, that's principle number one. Now we'll go to principle number two. The cost of something is what you give to get it. So when you make decisions, you have to think about the benefits and the cost. And here you have to include opportunity costs. So opportunity cost is what you have to give up to get this. So the opportunity cost of taking this class is whatever happiness or achievement that you can get from the other classes that you could have taken. And of course, I mean, if this is a required course, then of course this one, this class is the most important. But of course, maybe not. And actually, there are 5 principles of microeconomics classes. So you don't have to take this one per se. So okay, so that's your opportunity cost. So for example, what is the opportunity cost for going to college? Well, you have to pay for tuition. You have to pay for the textbooks, for the fees. And you do have to pay for room and board, but that's not opportunity cost, because you will have to pay for your rent, for the food, even if you're not coming to college. But you're paying it someplace else. Okay, but what else? The other opportunity cost that you usually forget is your foregone wages. You could have went 4 years to work and earn a monthly salary. Or you could actually start your own business and become a billionaire. But you're giving that up to study in college. One of the classic examples of this is, think about LeBron James. LeBron James skipped college entirely, and for a very good reason. Well, I mean, he's earning a fortune now in the NBA, and so for him to go to college, he has to give up like annual salaries of millions of dollars, and so and of course, that is the reason why LeBron James decided to just drop out of high school and go straight to college, and go straight to the NBA and skip college entirely. But there are other professional athletes that decide year by year should they drop out of college and go on to the next level, and to go to the NFL or go to be drafted to the NBA and so on, and that's because they have very large foregone earnings there. What is the cost to go to a movie? Well, you have to pay for a ticket. That's one thing, but also the time that you're spending there. That's also very valuable. I'm not sure if you had this experience. You sit down in the movie. After 30 minutes, you say, "Gosh, this is the worst movie I've ever seen in my life." Well, what should you do? Well, you already wasted the price of your movie ticket, too bad. But should you sit there for another 2.5 hours wasting your time, or should you just walk out? Economists say, hey, just walk out. I mean, you could have spent the 2.5 hours on something else that's even more valuable. And if you don't do that, you're not taking into account opportunity cost correctly. Of course, that applies if you're alone. I mean, if your significant other is going loves this movie and is watching the movie with you, standing up and leave, that could be a really bad idea. All right, principle number 3, rational people think at the margin. So rational people is defined as people who systematically and purposefully do the best they can to achieve their goal given the available opportunities. So they somehow maximize or try to achieve their goals. And the key thing for this principle is that you decide by evaluating cost and benefit at the marginal change. So small increments. Should I buy another orange? Or should I hire another worker? Should I produce one more unit? And yeah, okay, so here's a good example of this. So if you're a manager at a local, it used to be Welcome, now it's Carrefour, a grocery store. So you're thinking about hiring one more cashier that would increase your sales revenue by 40K per month. And the salary of a new cashier is 24K per month. And so should you hire this new cashier or not? Part B, you're paying 330 NT dollars per month for the monthly subscription for Netflix, regardless of how many movies or TVs you watch. And so should you watch one more movie or one more episode of a TV show? All right, so now you may join Slido. So if you have not scanned the QR code, please do it now. Okay, people are joining in, very good. And let's see if we can actually try this. Ooh, so okay, so yeah, so tons of people are coming in. Great. Yeah, so now you know there's this word cloud that's going to show everybody. All right, so let's look at the first question. So you're the manager of Carrefour, and you have to decide, do you want to hire this new cashier? And there's that would increase the sales by 40K, and the new cashier would earn 24K per month. Yes, no, or I don't know. Okay, so we have 10 seconds left, so please hurry up if you have not made your choice. Okay, countdown, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so time's up. Let me show the answer. Okay, so 54 of you said yes, 14 of you said no, so 1 of you said don't know. Okay, it's okay to not know. All right, so then the answer is yes. Why is that? Well, okay, we'll discuss this in a second. But now we look at the Netflix. Should you watch another movie or another episode? Yeah, I mean, yeah, like Sex Education just came up. The season 3 came up yesterday. Should you watch it? Or no, it's the first day of class. Maybe I should start to work hard on my studies. Yes, no, or maybe. Okay, time's up. Let's look at your answers. 50 of you said yes, 8 said no, 26 says maybe. Yeah, and that's actually for a very good reason. Okay, so let's look at this. All right, so so manager at the local Carrefour Welcome supermarket. The marginal benefit for hiring one more cashier is sales will go up by 40K. And the marginal cost is 24K, so 40K is greater than 24K, so marginal benefit is higher than marginal cost. Yes, we should hire him. Okay, that's a yes. What about Netflix? Netflix is a little bit challenging. What's the marginal benefit for watching another movie? Well, having fun. Yeah, so you have the enjoyment. But what's the marginal cost? The monetary cost is 0, so you don't have to pay anything. However, there is your opportunity cost of time. Well, if it's the day before the midterm, well, that could be, the opportunity cost could be very large. But if it's first day of class, well, it depends. I mean, maybe you already selected 30 course credits. You don't have to shop around, but maybe not. Okay, yeah, so here it's a maybe. If the marginal benefit exceeds the marginal cost, then you should watch the movie. If not, then you should not. All right, principle number 4. People respond to incentives. Okay, all right. So incentives is something that induces the person to act. And so here you could have unintended consequences. And people respond to these incentives. And because rational people have to make decisions comparing the marginal cost and benefit. And so, for example, if you increase the price of donuts, consumers would buy fewer donuts. Sellers would try to produce more. They're trying to sell them. And so here's an example. So if the government increases the gas tax by $10 per liter, how do consumers respond? Well, you might want to drive smaller or hybrid cars because it's more fuel efficient. You might want to carpool or take the subway, take the MRT or the bus, or you want to move closer to where you work or you study. Living in the dormitories, that's one way to do this. What about businesses? Well, the electric car companies who want to produce more electric cars, and these trucks, these transportation business that needs big trucks that need a lot of gasoline, they would have to raise their price. Okay, so here's another example. So you're selling your old laptop. You already spent $10,000 on repair. Before you want to sell it, the Blu-ray drive dies. You have to pay $6,000 to replace it, or just sell it as is. So in each of the following scenarios, should you replace the Blu-ray drive? First, the Shopee value, which is what you could get for selling your laptop secondhand, is $25K if the Blu-ray drive works. If it's $17K if it does not work. Versus part 2, Shopee value is $20K if the drive works, and $15K if it does not work. All right, so get ready. So we're gonna start to prepare for our quiz. Yeah, so part 1. So you can pay $6,000 to replace the Blu-ray drive or sell it as is. The Shopee value is $25K if the Blu-ray drive works, $17K if it does not work. So should you replace the drive or not? Yes, no, don't know. Okay, so we have 10 seconds left, so please continue to make your decisions. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up. Okay, let's look at your answers. 55 of you say yes, 17 say no, 1 person says don't know. So what is the answer? Well, it's a yes. So a lot of you got it right. Okay, but now, what if the Shopee value is only $20K, and if the Blu-ray drive works, and $15K if it does not work? Yes, I should replace it, or no, I should not, or I don't know. Okay, so you guys still have 15 seconds to finish this. And remember that it's really about what's the marginal benefit and the marginal cost for doing this. Okay, 5 seconds left. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so time's up. Let's look at your answers. So 74 of you say no, 5 of you say yes, 3 people don't know. Okay, let's think about this for a second. Yes, no is indeed the answer. So to replace the Blu-ray drive, it's $6,000, and the value is 25. So the gain for replacing the Blu-ray drive is 8,000 from 17K to 25K. So that outweighs the cost of 6,000. So you should replace it. But if the Shopee value is only 20K and versus 15K, the gain is only $5,000, and so it's not worth the $6,000 to fix it. All right. So if you didn't get this, that's okay. You can go back to watch the video or think this again. But a lot of you got it. Anyway, so now we finished part 1 of this lecture, which is how people make decisions. And so if you have any questions about this part, so you can post it on Slido. But if not, so I do have to pause the lecture because we have finished section 1 of this lecture. We already went through principle 1 through 4 in the Wednesday lecture. Now we will go into principle 5, 6, and 7 on how people interact. So let's jump in. Principle 5, trade can make everyone better off. People benefit from trade because you can get a larger variety of goods and services compared to if you try to produce this on yourself, or you can get it at a lower cost. So countries can actually benefit from trade as well. I mean, you can specialize on what they can do best, and again, you enjoy a greater variety of goods and services. So that's principle 5. Principle 6, markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. So markets is a group of buyers and sellers. This may or may not be in the same location. If you think of like say eBay or Shopee or Taobao, these online trading platforms, I mean the buyers and sellers are not in the same physical location. They are on the same platform, that is true. So that's markets. And when we talk about organizing economic activity, we mean determining what to produce, how to produce, and how to allocate these what's produced to their final user. What should each member of the society produce, how this is produced, and so after this production, how do we distribute these goods and services to different members in the society. These are what we call organized economic activity. And the principle 6 says that markets are a good way to actually do that. So the market economy, we call this a market economy because you allocate resources through decentralizing decisions of many firms and households, and they would interact in the market to do this. And so this is very successful in organizing economic activity to promote prosperity overall, usually through prices. So what do we mean by prices? On the market, so jointly by the interaction of buyers and sellers, there is a market price that emerges. This price actually reflects the value of this product or this good evaluated by the buyer, because if your valuation of this good is lower than the market price, you would not want to buy it. It's only the high value buyers who would buy this. And it also reflects the cost of producing the good, because if your seller's cost is higher than this market price, you would not want to sell. You don't even want to produce it because it's not worth it. And so because of this, you basically aggregate information from the buyers and the sellers. And so this achieves what Adam Smith calls the invisible hand, which is, so you're guiding self-interest households and firms to make choices that you actually achieve efficiency, which is to maximize a society's economic well-being. Okay, so principle 7, governments can sometimes improve market outcomes. Even if you believe in free market, one thing is required to make markets work, which is you need property rights. So you need to enforce rules and maintain institutions that are required for a market economy. So suppose your property could be stolen, then of course, I mean, there's no point to work, produce, invest, or save, because tomorrow it might be stolen by somebody else. So you need property rights for the market economy to actually work. So the government provides police and there's courts. So if somebody steals my property, I can sue them. So you need these institutions in place to make sure that there is property rights, and so that we can actually, that provides the incentives for us to work, to produce, to invest, or to buy things, because I mean, if I can steal, then why would I want to buy? Yeah, so property right enforcement is the foundation of market economy, and we need the government to actually do that. This, even if you don't think the government is going to do anything good, at least this is something that the government will achieve. The government could also promote efficiency. This happens especially because there might be market failures. So the market left on its own, so might not be able to allocate resources efficiently. We'll see this when we get to chapter 10 and 11 on externalities and public goods and common resources. So the biggest possibility or source of market failure is externality. The leading example is pollution. So I mean, if I smoke, then everybody around me will enjoy, quote unquote, enjoy secondhand smoking. And of course, I mean, that's not really pleasant. And of course, that means that when I smoke, then this bystanders will be affected by my smoking. That's a problem that could cause market failure. And the other one is market power. Suppose I'm the monopoly. Well, okay, at some sense, I am the monopoly. I'm the only instructor teaching principles of microeconomics in NTU. So if you come here, you're required to take a course on principles of microeconomics, then I am the only seller on the market for this product. And of course, what that means is that if I could have charged you, I could charge like a high price because I have the market power. If you don't buy from me, you won't get your degree. This is a required course. So yeah, so that's market power. Luckily, in NTU, the instructors do not charge the students for taking a class. So even if I have the market power, I am regulated to not exercise that. But this kind of governmental regulation can promote efficiency, and that's another job that the government can do. So a single buyer or single seller, because you have market power, this could also cause market failure. The government is also capable of promoting equality. When we talk about efficiency, we're trying to maximize the size of the pie. But if the whole pie goes to only one person, that person will be happy, but everybody else is going to starve to death. So trying to, like say, usually what we do is we tax the rich and try to provide, subsidize the poor, or we have a lot of welfare policies, and so that we can help make the pie being divided more equally. One thing I do want to say, there's a disclaimer. The government can improve market outcomes. That does not mean the government always will improve market outcomes. Well, there is actually a governmental failure as well. Of course, you can imagine if the government is run by a dictator, he might be maximizing the wealth of his own family or himself, instead of trying to maximize the well-being of the whole society. Even for a democratic government, there could be other problems. So we're saying that the government can sometimes improve market outcomes, but it does not mean that it will always do so. Okay, so let's think about the following situations and think about what is the government's role in these situations, and does the government improve the outcome? So think about public schools. Public schools in Taiwan from K to 12 are mostly public schools. So there are a handful of private schools in Taiwan. So if you're rich enough, you can go to those private schools. So compared to a situation where it's mostly private schools or very few public schools, does this governmental intervention of providing public education, does that improve the outcome? That's the question that you want to ask. Taiwan has a national health insurance. That's also something that's very special. I believe that was 1996. So before that, there was not a national health insurance, but it was imposed by the then government. So because of this national health insurance, we have very wide access to health services. If you get cancer, well, don't worry, the national health insurance covers that. And if you have an emergency, you will not go bankrupt. But people start to worry about whether or not the national health insurance would actually go bankrupt itself, because there could be different kind of excessive usage of the national health insurance. But in any case, does the government improve the outcome by providing a national health insurance plan? Think about workplace safety regulations or public highways. Or what about patent laws? I mean, so now because of COVID, we actually see this. Different vaccines are charged a different price. AZ is very, very cheap compared to, say, Moderna or BNT, which they charge substantial amounts of money. So this is protected by patents. But what that means is that these drug companies can charge very high prices for these life-saving drugs. If you think of the world, I mean, we have this big problem that the rich countries have a lot of vaccines, but the poor countries have no access to that. And people are talking about, should we have a third dose, fourth dose, a booster every year in these rich countries? But in a lot of poor countries, what you get is that they don't even get the first dose. For all these, so does the government improve the outcome? And okay, so here we actually have an active pool. So in which of these 5 different situations do you think that the government will actually, this governmental intervention improves the outcome? I believe this is multiple choice. Now you can choose which of these would actually improve the market outcome. Okay, so we can slightly pause here for everybody to try to think about this and decide, so which one of these do you think is actually good? I went very quickly through workplace safety regulations. So think about construction workers. I mean, they might be in a disadvantaged situation because they're forced to accept not that safety environment because the employers might have more market power. Usually these are big companies that get governmental contracts or private contracts to build things. And so one way the government can improve is to say, hey, let's just impose these regulations to make sure that if a construction worker is lifted up, he needs a safety net, or things like that. Or that you cannot work more than, like say, 8 hours a day to make sure that they're not so tired that they fall asleep. So does this regulation improve the outcome? The last one that I didn't talk about is public highways. So think about the highways that are built in Taiwan. Does that improve the outcome here? All right, so I already see more than 50 students already send in their answers. So you can still send in, but I'm going to show you the current poll. Yeah, so a lot of people think that number one is public highways. Almost most of the people think highways that are built by the government improve the outcome. Here immediately you see less than half think that patent laws are actually improving the outcome. So here you see that there is disagreement here on which one does the government really help and which one that it's actually detrimental, that intervening in the market may not be a good thing. So before we go on, so do you have any questions about principles 5 to 7 on how people interact? If yes, then we can actually go through the next section. All right, so now let's move on to principles 8, 9, 10. That's how the economy works as a whole. So we went through how people make decisions, that's individual decision making. And then we went on to how people interact. So that's within a society, within the economy, how people are interacting, or firms and consumers. And now we'll look at the aggregate, the whole economy. One thing I do want to say is that these are principles of macroeconomics. So it's really for the spring semester, where Kelly Oates, who is an American, will talk about. So it's not really for now. But I think it's still a good overview to look at the 10 principles as a whole. But I do want to say that some of these macro principles are still controversial and are under debate. In Yoram Bauman's translation of the 10 principles of economics that I actually try to show the video of at the very beginning before class starts. So he basically translates that to blah, blah, blah. By the way, Yoram's translation of the 10 principles is very amusing. I hope my lectures are like that. Unfortunately not. He's one of the only stand-up economists in the world, so you should watch that just for fun. All right, principle 8. A country's standard of living depends on its ability to produce goods and services. So if you look across countries and across time, you would find that standard of living is very different. Think about the US. The US has an average income of $60,000 US in 2017, where Nigeria is only 6K. So that's 10 times the difference. So the average income of rich countries is more than 10 times than the average income of poor countries. So you have this huge variation across countries. And if you think of even the same country now versus like say 100 years ago, for the US it's 8 times greater now versus 100 years ago. Of course, you can think about Taiwan. Taiwan has went through what we usually call the Asian miracle, where you got rapid economic growth for decades. And now it's slowed down, but still, compared to other places, it's still relatively good. But even looking back 50 years, during the Japanese era, there it went through almost like pre-modern state to a sort of modern state. And so if you compare 100 years from now versus now, or even more, what you actually get is that, so there's a huge difference. Well, think about your parents. When they were at your age, what are their conditions? Think about your grandparents. What is the standard of living in their age when they were young? I mean, that is the difference that you actually see across time. But the key thing here is that we're evaluating whether or not you're good, or this economy, this country is good or not, based on the standard of living. So the most important factor to determine the standard of living is what we call productivity. How much you can produce given the same input. This, of course, depends on your capital, your equipment, the skill of the labor, technology available, and all that. But that has the biggest impact on living standards. Compared to that, foreign competition or labor unions, these are not as important. So how do you boost productivity is the key problem of increasing the standard of living of a country. Principle number 9, prices rise when the government prints too much money. So here we're going to talk about inflation. This is, again, an economy-wide phenomenon where the price level of the whole economy is going up. And in the long run, inflation is almost always caused by printing too much money. So you have an excessive growth in quantity of money. And of course, that means is that the value of the money is going to go down. And so the faster the government creates money, the greater the inflation rate. One of the leading examples of this is, think about the nationalist government of China back in 1945 to 1949. So during that era, the communists were fighting with the nationalist government. And there was what we call hyperinflation, where they even have this joke about you have to bring a whole bag of cash to buy pork. and the amount of pork you buy differs compared to the morning versus the afternoon, and a pound of cash, paper currency, cannot buy a pound of pork. So that's when the government is printing too much money. So you have this inflation. So don't print too much money. That's something that's very important. Principle number 10. The society faces a short-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment. So in the short run, different economic policies that we'll talk about in the spring pushes inflation and unemployment in the opposite direction. There are other factors to make this trade-off more severe or not, but there's always this trade-off. Okay, so now let's think of, to conclude this chapter, let's have this real-world scenario to think about. So suppose NTU decides to reduce the price of campus U-bike rentals from $5 per trip to $1 per trip. Will the number of students desiring to ride the U-bikes go up or go down or remain the same? And will the wait time to find a U-bike go up, go down, or remain the same? And will the lower prices of a U-bike rental necessarily lower the true cost of rental? Remember, we talked about opportunity costs here in the first 4 principles. So does lowering the price to 1 NT dollar actually lower the true cost? The last thing is that will this opportunity cost of U-bike rental be the same for a student with no outside employment or a student who has a job earning, like, say, 450 NT dollars per hour? Say, like, if you become a private tutor, so your hourly wage is in that range. All right, so here we have Slido, so prepare to join the quiz, get ready. And so, okay, so first thing, the number of students desiring to ride the U-bike, will it increase, decrease, or remain the same when the price of a U-bike rental is dropped from $5 per trip to $1 per trip? So we have 30 seconds to answer this. So now I believe we have roughly 10 seconds left. So please make your answers on Slido. If you have not joined, please hurry up. Okay, so time's up. And so now we'll look at the results. Out of 58 responses, so 56 of you say it will go up. Nobody says it will go down. 2 says remaining the same. Based on the principles of economics, we believe that, yeah, so when the price goes down, the law of demand that we'll talk about later means that more students will want to ride the U-bike. Okay, so if you have not joined, please hurry up and scan the QR code because we're going to the next question. How would the amount of time it takes to find a U-bike change? It will go up, increase, decrease, or remain the same. Again, we have 30 seconds to do this. Please start to make your choice. So we have the last 5 seconds. Please hurry up if you have not completed it. Okay, so now time's up. Let's look at the results. The majority of you guys said it will increase, but there's still 1 person who says it will decrease, or 5 say it will remain the same. And yeah, so because there are more people who want to get a U-bike, so it's likely that the amount of time it takes to find one is going to go up. Think of, like, say, 8 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning when you arrive in the MRT Gongguan station right outside of NTU campus. There's like 100 U-bikes that could be parked there. But if you arrive 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, it's likely that you will find very few bikes left because a lot of the students who live in Taipei City would commute through the MRT and then try to ride the U-bike into campus to various places. Actually, in the morning, what you get in NTU campus is that right outside the social science building, there's like tons of U-bikes piled up there because a lot of the students, after coming out of the MRT or the bus, they will ride a U-bike to campus, and so that's where all of the bikes end up in the morning. And of course, in the afternoon, you have the opposite pattern where if you're outside the social science building, you will find almost no U-bikes, and then there'll be tons of U-bikes piled up in Gongguan Station and so on. So most of you got that. Next one, will the lower price of a U-bike rental necessarily lower the true cost of rental? Yeah, so yes, no, or I don't know. Well, actually, it's okay if you don't know. So I do encourage you to think about this. So even if the university says, let's lower this price, so will the true cost of the rental go down? That's the question. Yeah, this is a more difficult question compared to the previous one, so it's okay to disagree. All right, so let's take a look at your answers. 43 of you say no, some 8 say yes, 14 don't know. This really depends. I mean, you really have to think carefully about, it might be different for different people. So now we'll look at the last question, which is, would the opportunity cost of a U-bike rental be the same for students with no outside employment versus somebody who has a job that's going to earn 450 NT dollars per hour? So will the opportunity cost be the same? Yes, no, or I don't know. All right, so I believe we still have 10 more seconds to go, so please make your choice, or you can make a guess, or say I don't know, that's fine. All right, so now let's look at your answers. So 14 of you say yes, it could be the same. 50 say no, and you don't know. So think of, suppose you are a student who has a part-time job as a private tutor, so you earn 500 NT dollars per hour. And now you need to go to your student's house to do your job. Compared to that, if there's a student who does not have an outside option, how important it is that right after class, you have access to a U-bike. Well, I mean, if you need to rush to get to the student's house, you don't want to be late. And the worst case is that, so suppose you're somehow stuck here, and then you miss this entire appointment, then you will lose 500 NT dollars per hour. So depending on how long is your tutor session, well, I mean, it's very costly to you compared to somebody who does not have this job. So it's likely that the opportunity costs for U-bike rentals are actually different. All right, so yeah, so no. Let's move on. So to summarize this chapter, we talked about 10 principles. So the first 4 principles are about individual decision making. People face trade-offs, opportunity costs, rational people think at the margin, and people respond to the incentives and change their behavior. So this is about making decisions on your own. Then we have principle 5 to 7 on how people interact. Trade can make everybody better off. Markets are usually a good way to coordinate economic activity. And the government has the potential to improve the market outcome by solving market failure or promoting equality. Then the last 3 principles are about the economy as a whole. We talked about productivity. That's really the ultimate source of increasing living standards. Do not print too much money. Printing money is the source of inflation. And then there's a short-run trade-off between inflation and unemployment. Okay, so here, this slide is the homework slide. So I'm going to show you my summary of this class. My summary is that you have 7 microeconomic principles and 3 macroeconomic principles. In this semester, because it's principles of microeconomics, we'll focus on the first 7. And in the spring, we'll try to apply these 7 principles and think about the whole economy. And so we'll look at the other 3. Now we'll look at how to read the textbook. I think the first thing is that if you read before class, you'll get more out of class. The other thing is that some people like to highlight important sections, but I think it's even better if you try to summarize. So after reading a whole section, you put the textbook aside and try to summarize in your own words what this is all about. So in the textbook, at the end of each chapter, it has a summary. So you can actually compare your summary versus the author's summary and see how good you're summarizing or how good you're understanding this. Number 3 is that you should try to test yourself. In each section, there's a quick quiz to make sure that you understand that. That helps you see if you understand. Actually, you also see this in the lecture, right? I have all these Slido quizzes to test you to see if you understand. And then work on the homework. Yeah, practice makes perfect. There are review questions and homework problems at the end of the chapter. So going through these questions, that would help you. And of course, because I will be assigning these homework questions, so that's also part of your assignment. Then go online. So the first link is my website. So that's my Principles Fall 21 class website. The publisher also has a website to get online resources. The next thing is that it's always good to study in groups, because what you can do is you can try to review with each other. I mean, if you don't know how to summarize, you can see how other people summarize. And also, even if you're very good at this, trying to teach somebody else, this really helps you because you have to be crystal clear. I mean, before I taught principles of economics, I might have score very high in the exams, in the courses, but it's only when I start to teach, I'm forced to make sure that I understand each and every concept that I'm teaching 100%. And by teaching somebody else, you will realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm not sure about this or that. These weak points will be revealed when you teach, and you will have a chance to improve. Of course, now it's much difficult to do this because of the pandemic, but I do encourage you guys to try to at least find one partner. I think some departments even have these pairings that they randomly assign pairs of you to be study partners of each other, and I do think that's very good. So I already went through this. Teach someone. The best way to learn something is to teach it. And then, so people asked about the older editions of the textbook. I think the key difference is that, especially if you think of it, I mean, there are real-world examples that are actually compiled in the textbook. And so the more later editions will have more recent events. And of course, none of this has COVID yet, but you can imagine the next edition will almost surely have different, actually in the textbook you have case studies, you have in the news, you have ask the experts in each of these chapters. In fact, some of the online resources, you actually have this. For example, Greg Mankiw actually has a blog, so you can actually follow his blog where he talks about the news and so on. And actually, when we go to the next chapter, you'll see this, but I do believe that you should try to, the way to think like an economist is that when you look at even these online news, you try to think about principles of economics. That's something that's very important. And you'll see that in my exams as well. Okay, I believe this is almost the last slide, but I talked about this at the very beginning, where I do think that what economics really is it's about institutions and human behavior, or the reactions to institutions. You can analyze various different institutions and mechanisms in addition to the market. That's something that we should look at. One thing I want to show you is the course website. Let's see if I can show this. Yeah, so this is my website. So here you can find the syllabus, if you don't see that in NTU Cool. So if you're not sure about which textbook you should use, so this is the link to the right book. So somebody was asking, what is the photo of the book? Yeah, so it's over here. Apparently it's very expensive if you buy from this website. So that's why we have the group order. And then, we have the reference, that's the other textbook, and also the comic by Yoram Bauman. And today's lecture, so we just finished 10 principles. So that's this link. So if you click on that, you would see my PowerPoint that's printed out here. And in fact, I mentioned there is a publisher's sample chapter. So if you click on Chapter 1, you will get, this is the actual PDF from Cengage. So this is Chapter 1 that they provided as a sample chapter, 10 Principles of Economics. And I'm going into Chapter 2. If we get that today, then, so that's the production possibility frontier. You will see this as well. And then also the publisher has a sample chapter of Chapter 2 as well, and so on. And I haven't uploaded the lecture of Chapter 3 here, but if you go to NTU Cool, you will see last year's slides. The latest will be uploaded here. All right, so let's go back to the PowerPoint. So are there any questions about the 10 principles? So that's the end of Chapter 1, and we'll move on to the classroom experiment. Yeah. So the first classroom experiment is the LUPI game. So this was done as a Swedish lottery by the governmental lottery company in Sweden. So it's trying to guess the lowest unique positive integer. So each one of you should pick one number between 1 to 100. And you will be the winner if you choose the smallest but unique number. So if you choose 1, nobody else chooses 1, then you win. If 2 of you or more people choose 1, then you both lose, or all of you lose. And then we'll see if anybody uniquely chooses 2. If another person is the only person that chooses 2, then he or she wins. If there are 2 or more, then too bad, you don't win. And we'll see if anybody uniquely chooses 3, and so on. So the prize, I said the classroom experiment counts as 15% of the grade. So the winner of the LUPI game will get 1 point of the grade. So please choose one number. So I think you can scroll down to find all of the numbers here, up to 100. So it's your choice. So please enter which number. I will not review the answers yet. So please start to enter one number. And remember, the winner will be the lowest but unique number. 71 of you already made your guess. Now let's see. Here's the answers. So we got 9 people picking 1. Too bad, none of you won. Nobody picked 2. Oh my God. If I picked 2, I could have won. 4 people picked 3. 2 people picked 4. 5 people picked 3. So none of you have won. 5 people picked 6. 7, 5 people. 8, 2 people. 9, 4 people. 1 person picked 10. So 10 is the winning number. Now let's proceed. Suppose we play this again. What would you do? Well, now we know that a whole bunch of people picked 1. Nobody picked 2. Should you pick 2 next time? Well, that's the problem, right? Because everybody sees that nobody picked 2 last time. For this time, if you also pick 2, and somebody else does, then both of you don't win. And it's even more challenging for the 9 people who picked 1. Should you choose a different number? That's the problem. If you all leave and change, then the last person who does not leave will actually win. But if 2 of you or more of you stay and insist on choosing 1, then both of you or all of you will lose. That is the question. Okay, so for the LUPI game, these are the economic lessons. First, this is a set of institutions. Everybody is trying to maximize. But you need to react because other people are maximizing. So in the LUPI game, picking 1, if nobody else is picking 1, then you win. But other people may be picking 1. So you should think, should I pick 2 or more? Based on institutions, individual optimizing, and reaction to other people's optimization, then you should ask, what should the aggregate data look like? So that's the theoretical prediction. Here is the LUPI game equilibrium. So to win, you have to make sure that nobody is picking your number, and nobody is uniquely choosing a number smaller than you. So for you to win by choosing 1, it means that nobody else is picking 1. What does it mean win by choosing 2? If nobody is uniquely choosing 1, and nobody is choosing 2. What does it mean to win by choosing 3? Well, nobody uniquely choosing 1, nobody uniquely choosing 2, and nobody choosing 3. What about 4? Well, nobody uniquely choosing 1, nobody uniquely choosing 2, nobody uniquely choosing 3, and nobody choosing 4. This can go on. Well, could you win by choosing 100? Actually, yes. Nobody uniquely choosing 1, all the way up to nobody uniquely choosing 99. And the equilibrium, so what should you do? Well, if you calculate the probability of these different situations, you should pick the number that gives you the highest winning probability. So in equilibrium, the winning probability should all be the same. And so if you assume the number of players is Poisson, you can actually solve the mixed strategy equilibrium here so that all of the winning probabilities are the same. You can actually write down a very crazy formula. Oh, by the way, this part will not be on the exam, so you shouldn't worry if you don't get this. But okay, so if nobody chooses 1, that's the probability that you win by choosing 1. And to win by choosing 2, nobody is uniquely picking 1 and nobody choosing 2. All right, so you have 99 equalities and all the probabilities add up to 1. So you have 100 equations and 100 unknowns. So you can solve this mixed strategy equilibrium. The probabilities decrease, so choosing 1 with the highest probability, and it goes down. In the original Swedish version, it goes to 99999, but in our classroom example, it goes to 100. But all of these probabilities have to be positive, and it drops slowly, but after a cutoff, it drops almost down, very quickly and asymptotes to 0. So in the Swedish lottery, the magic number is 5518. So after 5,000, you have this very sharp decline, and then everything beyond 5518 is almost 0. And then this cutoff depends on the average number of players in this game. If this number of players goes to infinity, then you basically converge a uniform choice of equal probability of all numbers. If you couldn't get the last 2 slides, that's fine. This will not be in the exam. Yeah, but you can ask the empirical question, does the data match the theory? This is the Swedish lottery. We actually collected 7 weeks of data. They played every day 1 game. They have some weekly cycles, but this is we're aggregating each week. This is week 1. The pink line is what the equilibrium predicts, and you see that it's completely off. The small numbers are chosen too much. The high numbers above 5518 should not be chosen, but there are a lot of people choosing that. And then there's a gap between 2000 and 5518 where it's not chosen enough. Actually, you can find some very interesting numbers here. Here you have a spike here between 6,000 and 7,000. My guess is that's 6666. If you go on, you can see there's another spike at close to 8,000, 7777. And then you can go on to, hey, there's 8888. I'm not sure what this one is, but right before 10,000, that's your 9999. So in week 1, things are completely off. Let's look at week 3. Things are converging closer to equilibrium. Week 5 and week 7. Now down to week 7, this is the last week of data we have. Well, the small numbers that were overchosen are now close to what theory predicts, or much closer, although there's still a lot of spikes. The big numbers that you should not choose are not chosen that frequently anymore, even though 777 here is still here. Barely see 8888, and 9999 requires very good eyesight to see. And the gap between 2000 to 6000 is filling up. So now it's only a small gap between 4500 to 5000. Okay, so here are some other examples of previous classes of Principles of Economics playing this. So here you got a whole bunch of people picking 5. Here you see huge spike at 3. And the unique winner, I believe, is 19. That's quite crazy. Actually, this is an aggregate of 10 rounds of data, so it's not that the 19 is the winner. There are winners in each of the 10 rounds. In this year, because we needed to play a lot of rounds, so we actually had 2 winners, one between 1 and 50, the other between 51 and 100. This is 2010. Here is 12. This is the first round data. So you see that a lot of people picked 1, 3 people picked 2, nobody picked 3 and 4. 3 people picked that, and the winner was 6. But you see some very interesting patterns, like 13 was picked a lot, 17 was picked a lot. 23. Here, I don't know why. 37 are picked by 5 people. Yeah, so you see interesting things like that. This is another year where you can see round 1, round 2, and round 3, and you see it shifting around. This is round 3 of another year where 6 won. And this is another class. Actually, we did this on the largest unique, so it's close to 100. So 99 won here. And this is 2019. So here you see that actually 15 won. That's a unique number. Nobody picked 14, so 14 could have won. All right, so here it seems that initially empirical data might not match the theory, but you are converging towards that. Then you can ask, can individual differences be explained? In the LUPI game data in Sweden, you get this people picking their birth year, or this was done in 2007, so you have 2007 chosen very frequently. But the fun thing is that if your year happen to be a full year, like 1960, well, you choose it much less frequently compared to 1961, 1959. Or 1970, that's much less chosen compared to plus and minus 1. So very interesting patterns here. The last thing is that can we actually have explain round 1? So here the yellow lines are the Swedish field data. The dotted line is the Poisson equilibrium that we just tried to solve. Actually, this is part of my research, but I actually tried to do a cognitive hierarchy model. When the thinking step is on average is 1.8 steps of reasoning, then you actually can get this prediction that you see people overchoose small numbers, and you have the gap between 2,000 and 5,000. And you can actually simulate a learning model where people try to imitate numbers close to the winning number. And so that this is an imitation learning starting from day 2. So you can see the black lines are the model and the gray one is the data. So each time you have a winning number, so you react to that. And by the week of week 5, week 6, week 7, so you are converging towards the Poisson-Nash equilibrium. Although, yeah, we don't have further data to show that if it actually converges to it. So up to here, so we saw 3 principles. There's an institution, you're maximizing. You have to react to other people maximizing. We ask if the theory matches, what does the theory say? And if the data matches the theory. And then can you improve the theory by explaining individual differences? And the last thing is that, hey, can we improve this institution? So the LUPI game was stopped in Sweden in the 8th week. There were rumors that people were colluding. You pick 1, I pick 2, he picks 3, and so on. Suppose you cover 1 through 6,000. It seems that you might guarantee a win. So they had to stop it. So you can imagine, how can I improve this? Okay, actually I don't know, because think carefully. If one gang is trying to collude and picking 1 through 6,000, but another gang is also trying to do this, and both groups are picking 1 through 6,000, what would happen? Well, both would lose, because all of these numbers between 1 through 6,000 are picked twice or even more. And so collusion that may or may not work in this game. So yeah, so how can you make sure that the institution is not ruined by some kind of crazy behavior or collusion? Yeah, that's something you should think carefully about. And the last question is, this is a historical question, where did this institution come from? For the LUPI game, so it was done because one of the Swedish lottery company's employee heard a lecture from a Swedish economist on game theory. And so he said, hey, let's try to do this in Sweden. But for other institutions, that really depends. Okay, so any questions about experiment 1? Okay, so that's the end of this chapter.